Okay. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you all. This is a very important meeting for us. It's our May meeting, which is where we consider our budget. So that's an important part of our financial year. And but before that, we have some matters of board business to attend to. So I guess the first thing that we are going to discuss would be the minutes. Sorry, I'm
two sets of minutes.
Yeah, 2 sets. I'm sorry, I got distracted here. Yeah, so we have 2 sets of minutes. The first one that we will consider is the board work session from April 13th. Did people have a chance to review those, and does anyone have any additions or corrections? I had one correction under the last sentence. The board directed Dunkelberg to continue to investigate land use options, and I believe that should say to instead of on the Roble Road property. Okay. All right. Any other comments or corrections? I'd entertain a motion for approval as corrected.
I'll move to accept the board work session minutes as of April 13th, 2022.
As corrected.
As corrected.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Second set of minutes is for our April meeting. And again, I had a couple of corrections on the second page. One under the first under the annual monitoring of library director performance. That first sentence is in the future tense, and I should think instead of will conduct, it should say conducted. And same thing under executive session, the Deschutes Public Library District conducted rather than will conduct. So those are my 2 corrections on those. Did anybody have any further corrections? Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from our board meeting, April the 13th, 2020.
As corrected.
As corrected.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We now have the public comment section of our meeting. The board is committed to hearing from the public, and we are pleased that you've taken the time to speak with us today. We ask that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. While we do not directly respond to public comments or engage in dialogue with speakers, we seriously consider input from the public. Public comments at meetings is one important way the board receives feedback, and it enables us to do our job of formulating policies to govern the district. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us today. So we have Tim Siniger. Tim, would you like to?
Can I just sit here?
Yes, you may.
Okay.
That's always an option. And we have Lynn Connolly. Lynn.
I was just here to listen, but
Oh, that's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, we always like to give people a
I
chance.
think Tim had something to say.
Oh.
Did you have something to say?
Yes.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I was not able to attend the city council meeting where things headed south during the meeting, and was unable to be at the board meeting in April. But I am here today, and I had to catch up via the article in the bulletin as to the meeting itself. Sad and unfortunate that the Deschutes Public Library System spent this much time, effort, and money to move forward with the master plan for improving library services to the patrons and customers in this community, to have what happened at the city council meeting. I'm not sure why the city council decided the way they decided, but a school seemed to was able to get dispensations for that area. I remember the city council didn't want Les Schwab on 3rd Street, and yet it's open, and yet a library, this new central library, cannot get support from the city council. I fear part of the problem lies with some of the directors. There are some directors who have not been in favor of this plan from day one. And while it was okay to advocate for what you think is best for the community, once a board of directors takes a vote, everybody needs to get on board. There shouldn't be happiness at what happened at that city council meeting, and yet reading this article. And Ness seemed to actually have, some good thoughts on it. Maybe getting an east branch that's not leased would be a good idea, but that's for down the road. We all spent money and time and effort to put this together. And as far as Mr. Meow, I would be happy if he wasn't on this board. And I hesitate to say that, but I just find it curious that the city council would be that adverse to something. And if Mr. Meow said what he said at the end of the meeting to Mr. Dunkelberg there, I take exception to it. And that's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Yes?
I have the opposite tack. I have a lot of friends who I've talked to about this. We need strong community libraries, plural. La Pine is growing like crazy. I happen to live in Southeast Bend on Dilladu. And Southeast Bend is just exploding. We all drive the traffic. I'm a realtor, and I see where growth is headed, and it's not necessarily downtown, and it's certainly not out in the middle of 3 different parkways. That was sort of an untenable position, and I disagree with that location. I always have, and that it's back on the table that we can have community libraries that serve our families, that serve our communities, that we can walk to, that we can cycle to, that would discourage us from getting out of our cars, and that would make it handy for families to go down and have reading hour and the things that libraries are important to. Depositories for books are not as important as they were 20 and 30 years ago. I've got 2 books downloaded on my phone. I can read them anywhere. I can drive down the freeway and download a book. I do read hard copies, but I read both. Most of us do. Publications you can also read online. So I think it's less important to have huge, expensive central libraries, not that it's unimportant. And I have a lot of friends who agree with me. And I'm frankly surprised that there aren't more public opinions at this meeting. So anyway, I took the time to come down, and that's my opinion. And I appreciate Mr. Meow's comments and his traction on this particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other further comments? Okay, with that, I will close the public meeting section, public comment section. We have some bond updates. First on the Sunriver conceptual plan.
Yes. Sorry, I am dealing with technology real quickly and then we'll get to that. Okay, first off, Sunriver plans, and we have Matt Alvarez from Miller Hole with us.
Hello.
And, to talk a little bit about the conceptual plans for Sunriver. So Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Oh, let's see. Great. There. Can everyone see my screen? Okay. So the diagram that I'm showing here, and I know I'll make this relatively quick. I think we have a lot on the agenda, but this plan is, this document that I'm currently showing is what we included in our conceptual document at the end of that phase several months ago. And when we first looked at Sunriver, we were anticipating needing to kind of rethink the entryway and kind of expanding it, which is kind of shown on the diagram to the right, where the welcoming and the display area was expanded from the existing lobby footprint. And that was going to give us some ability to kind of incorporate a book drop, a new book drop on this kind of expanded footprint. There was some reconfiguration of the overall floor plan that shifted the staff area from kind of the main volume of the library that exists over here on item number 4, and shifting that to the north where the current meeting room spaces are located. And so some of those changes, you know, the fundamental kind of configuration of Sunriver hasn't changed in this new plan, but we have kind of scaled back and rethought how would we be able to kind of configure these changes within the existing footprint, knowing that kind of making this expansion was going to cost quite a bit of money as far as new exterior envelopes, windows, roofing. So if we could achieve some of the same elements within the existing footprint, we wanted to go ahead and kind of study that option. And this is a sketch of that study. So as you can see, the existing footprint kind of remains with that canted entry and entry lobby located right off the bathrooms. The staff area still takes over that former meeting space. Off to the west side, there would be a supervisor's office, a break room, and then instead of kind of trying to incorporate the book drop on the exterior, we've got a new book drop on the interior in this lobby space that will kind of access directly into the staff area. But we're also just kind of providing all the same amenities that we're incorporating into all the other branches, Lapine and Sisters, here at Sunriver, so that there's equity across all the branch projects. And then the main library space then kind of is focused to the south here, where we've got the main library space. And then the kids area will kind of be located where the former staff areas were located. It's got a lower ceiling height that seems kind of aligned with the program for kind of the smaller kids there. And then I know the public meeting rooms were really important for Sunriver and having them accessible after hours. And so we've provided one small meeting room that would accommodate 6 to 8 people adjacent to the kids area, but it would be accessed off of that main lobby space and allowed to be used after hours. So this red door is indicating where we might slide a partition similar to the kind of rolling gate that currently exists that would close off this library space after hours, but allow people to use the smaller meeting room, as well as these double doors over here that would allow a larger meeting room space. And we're estimating that larger meeting space could accommodate about 45 people fairly comfortably, maybe a little bit more than that And that there would be another door that would close off in this location, but that during hours of library operation where the library wants to spill into this meeting room, if it wasn't being used, it could be available to kind of have desks or other seating elements and just provide some kind of program flexibility for the overall space. Similar to that, all has the same kind of programmatic elements that the other branch libraries. We've got storage associated with needing to put some of the tables or extra chairs into a storage room off of that large meeting area, as well as a small kitchenette for making coffee and things like that. Other elements to the library, we're looking at, there's an existing fireplace. We were going to kind of reconfigure that to make it more energy efficient. But that space kind of is maintained in that area. And with that, I think definitely similar to all of the other libraries, we're upgrading all the mechanical systems to be more efficient and replacing all lighting with new LED lighting fixtures. And really, for the most part, most of the finishes throughout the library will be kind of replaced. Carpeting, new paint, wall finishes, and things like that.
Matthew, is the book drop, will it be accessible after hours?
That's a great question, and I didn't really address that. Currently, there is an exterior book drop that is located over here that a person can drive to and then drop that off. We're going to relocate it back to, as I understand it, its former location, and what kind of up closer to where the existing meeting room is, but it will now be the staff area. And so there will be a parking space adjacent to this book drop that somebody can kind of easily just return after hours. And then the distance between that kind of remote parking book drop is much closer to the staff area where they can wheel it in. And there's that covered area so that in inclement weather, it'll be a much easier to kind of pull those rolling carts back into the staff area and process those back into the system there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I neglected to mention that. Very important.
And
Go
I
ahead,
know
Ann.
there was, oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Matt, I know there was some concern for the entryway as far as snow accumulation and snow removal. Is anything being done to kind of address that with this plan?
Well, that's a good question. I think the intent of the design team, we are well aware that right here at this little knuckle kind of between this new meeting room and the entry is a location that currently gets a lot of buildup of snow. You know, I think when we first visited it, there was some kind of plywood boards or some boards that were protecting the exterior from kind of being inundated by that snow. We certainly will be looking at that. Since we won't be taking any or revising the exterior, there are some things that we can do, whether we're putting kind of snow shields or ice melting systems, but we will look at that from a design perspective to address that known issue. But I don't think we have any answers yet.
Okay,
As to
thank
how
you.
we would accommodate it.
Matt, could you address, you said that the larger meeting room would hold about 45 people. What is the capacity of the existing meeting room? How does that compare?
I believe it compares fairly, it's very similar in scale. So if you can kind of see that overall footprint here compared to that overall footprint, it's roughly about the same size, maybe a smidge smaller.
But then, and then it also has the capability of opening out into the main part of the library, so you could actually accommodate larger crowds.
Exactly, exactly. Yep. There would be an operable wall or partition between the meeting room and the library space that would accommodate much larger groups if that was desired.
Okay. But that would not be an after-hours function unless staff were on hand.
Exactly, precisely. And then what we are adding is that second smaller meeting room for after hours. So 2 programs could potentially be scheduled after hours.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
What's the cost differential between this design and the previous design?
We've got this sketch that has been shared with SunWest Builders, who are responsible for the branch library work package, and they're currently putting their costing information together. I don't believe, and maybe I'll look to Greg to see if we've received any updates on the cost estimate, but certainly we, by virtue of not altering the exterior envelope, there's certainly going to be a significant cost savings associated with that.
So we had talked to SunWest prior to them getting this plan, and as Matt said, they're doing an updated estimate for us now. But they did a kind of a high-level review of how much we had put into the budget for the roof renovation, which is the main component that's been adjusted, and that was about $250,000. So
Okay.
it was almost 10% of the budget construction cost estimate.
Okay, thank you.
And as I understand, the Sunriver construction or reconstruction or whatever is starting a little bit later. Sisters, Lapine, and others will start at the same time.
Yeah, Sisters in Lapine have already been initiated. We've already done schematic design and design development. So we really do have the plans, and we're just entering construction documents where we're putting together drawing packages that will really tell the contractor how that project is going to get built. So those are well far along in the process. I think Sunriver was paused based on kind of this desire to look at this new option. And I think what we'll be waiting for is direction from DPL as to whether or not we should proceed with this particular project, and it will initiate schematic design following kind of approval from the board.
Okay, thank you.
Bunny, if I can add on to that, our schedule was that Sunriver would follow Sisters in Lapine in construction, so that way we wouldn't be closing them at the same time.
Mhm.
And it is really on its kind of own path after that. It doesn't, nothing follows Sunriver. And so we really did have the opportunity here to make sure we had the right design before we pushed into, as Matt said, the schematic phase. So it'll have a slight effect on when we start construction, but it will still occur after Sisters in Lapine are completed and reopened.
Okay, thanks, Greg.
Yes.
Any further questions? I guess what the action on this would be to approve the conceptual plan as presented.
Yes.
Okay. Would anyone care to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion that we approve the conceptual design of the Lapine Library.
Sunriver.
Or Sunriver, I'm sorry, Sunriver Library.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right. Carries. Okay, now we're up to Greg's report.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I think as far as an overall summary of where we're at, schedule wise, We have not made any changes to our master development schedule, so we're tracking to that. As I mentioned last month, we put Central Library in a planning mode where we're evaluating our options of the land. And so that's continuing on that timeline. We won't finalize what the schedule is for Central, which will then have a direct effect on downtown Bend, because again, it follows, and as well as what we're going to do with East Bend, that we look at all of them holistically. So that is generally tracking to what we talked about of doing our evaluation. Redmond is tracking right to the development schedule. We're continuing in our design. We just completed the design development phase this past month and have moved into construction documents, which is our next design phase. And Miller Hall is well into that and moving forward. Our site plan application is in with the city and in process. It's proceeding as expected. We've had a lot of good dialogue with the city planners on questions that they had about street trees and tree grades and all the little details. But that's moving along really well. So we don't really see any issues with Redmond and its schedule. So that's progressed well. Sisters in Lapine, which as Matt mentioned, completed their design development phase just this past month, ended up here at the beginning of May. And so that is tracking to the development schedule, and we're working on all of our reviews and questions and budgeting for those two projects. We've worked on figuring out our temporary facilities for both Sisters and Lapine, and verified that we're putting those in place as we progress so that they're ready to go come next January. And that actually is true of Redmond. You know, we located a temporary facility location, issued an LOI, letter of intent, to the landlord. It's been fully executed. And so we're in agreement with terms and conditions. And we're now in that phase of developing the lease for that property. And again, they will actually prepare it ready for us to take occupancy in January. So that's tracking right with our schedule to close the Redmond Library, open the temporary, and start construction on the new. With the Sunriver, we had looked at adjusting our development schedule to allow for this conceptual phase here that we just talked about. This will trigger us to move directly into schematic design and put that back on track, so that as we complete the work on Sisters and Lapine, that we'll be prepared, ready to go right into construction on Sunriver. And so I don't see that there will be any real significant impacts on our development schedule. There could be a slight adjustment to the start date, but nothing that is really of significance. So from a schedule standpoint, that's kind of where we sit. Like I said, we haven't updated our master development schedule. It still remains as the last one published. And we'll be looking at making that next update probably over the next 2 months as we really refine any updates to Central. With the others, following along as scheduled, there's really no changes. The budget, overall bond budget, hasn't been any significant changes from last month or adjustments there. The report is attached, which really reflects costs expended against existing contracts, which were generally design costs. We did pay the DSIP, which is our insurance program for the bond measure. That policy was paid, so that was a big expenditure last month, and that policy is all in place and active as of now. So in our CMGCs, both Kirby and SunWest are getting enrolled into that, and as they start to bring on subcontractors here in the coming months, we'll then get them all enrolled. So that's all in place. overall, we have, like I said, there hasn't been any adjustments to the bond or to the budget from that standpoint. So nothing else on that. On procurement and contracts, not a lot of activity. Last month, we spoke about the FF&E procurement manager. And so we finalized that, and it's separate from the report is a board summary for approval of that cost proposal, and I'll run through that separately.
Okay.
In addition, Kirby Nagelhout, who's our CMGC on Redmond, has gone out, and we had approved previously to bring on a few trades that were design assist, and one of them was the DLT or Dowel Laminated timbers. And those materials form the floor and the roof structure of the building. And as we kind of dug deeper into that, the supplier has notified us that their lead time, because of just the supply chain issues that you hear out there, is 12 to 15 months out. And so we've looked at that and said, okay, we need to get in line, get them under contract, so that we can receive those materials next summer as anticipated. And so they went out, issued an RFP, secured the proposals back, the specified manufacturer, and this will be a purchase order. They will supply the material, and then Kirby will hire an installer, the framing contractor who will actually do it. So and separately, we have a summary of that, and to request approval for us to basically award that component of Kirby's construction contract costs, and we'll bring them on board. So those were the two active purchase and procurement activities. Nothing really different on insurance, on the entitlements. Really, we've worked the last month evaluating the options for the Central Library land options, and going through that process. On Redmond, again, the site plan, as I mentioned, it's in process. It's continuing per schedule, no issues. City's been very supportive of that request or that process. On design, I think kind of touched on most of these. Redmond design, we finished DD, we're into construction documents. And that was the design that we showed to you guys this last month. So I think we're proceeding well there. Same with the Sunriver. We talked about that just now. And then Sisters and Pine, we reviewed that last month, and they completed their DDs. And so we're moving next into construction documents there. And no activity on East Bend and Central, or excuse me, East Bend and Downtown Bend at this time. So kind of a little bit quiet month on that standpoint from the reporting. The summary schedule is not changed. It's basically the same. And as I noted, we haven't updated the section for Central for Downtown. We won't do that until we've got a clear path in front of us that everybody's agreed to, and then we'll make that adjustment. And then the other attachment is the cost report. So really it. To the extent you guys have any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Greg?
No.
I think that good summary. Thank you.
Yes. All right.
All right.
Actually, if we can go through the
Right.
awards. So the first one was the FF&E project manager,
Mhm.
and there was a summary there written up. And that is to bring on a project manager. They would be under the DeChase Mixes owner's representative contract, and they will engage in managing the purchasing efforts of all of the FF&E product. And so that's furniture, fixtures, and equipment. They will also, Chris will be in charge with all of the move management that we talked about last month, where they will really coordinate the moves in and out of each of the branches, warehousing, moving companies and those items. And now it's the benefit that we saw of having that person who lives here in town, working continuously, and would commence right away on that engagement. There's a budget set up in the overall program budget, and so the funds are already planned for expenditure, and this was just the methodology. So I think the request is authorization of the library director to execute that contract amendment.
Do you have any questions on this summary?
No.
Ann, did you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'd entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion to authorize the library director to execute the contract addendum with Chase Mekas for their contract on the DPL bond program to provide the FF&E purchasing and move management services not to exceed $408,000.
Okay. Do you hear a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. This is unanimously.
The next item on the agenda was the Oregon Department of Transportation. So that was ODOT. We actually don't have an action for the board today. We were expecting, ODOT informed us they were sending over the documentation for the land transfer of the right-of-way, the Roval property. But it didn't arrive. So that will get pushed off to next month. And at that point, we'll present it to you.
Okay.
The last item was the Dowel Laminated Timber, or DLT, and this is a summary of the proposal that Kirby Nagelhout has secured and submitted their request to us for approval of authorization of these funds. And this is something that we went through with them to evaluate the material. So the supplier that is selected is who is specified by our design team, went through the RFP process and submitted for us to approve. The request here is to authorize the library director to execute that amendment. This will be the first amendment to Kirby's contract for the construction costs. And the way the CMGC contract is organized and structured, it allows us to award pieces. And that way, in this case, we can award, it's an early award of a long lead item in order to get in line. And I do expect that we try to minimize, not have tons of these, but I would think we'll have a couple more as we get to the final and full GMP. And this cost component is within their current budget. And so it is our recommendation to approve this request and allow us to issue this amendment. And then they would issue a purchase order to this vendor and get our place locked in place.
Right. All right. Okay, any questions?
No, I think that DLT sounds like a very interesting product.
Yeah, no, it does sound interesting.
It really is.
Well, and this is kind of why we set this all up this way. So it's good
Yes.
to see that it's working and
Yeah.
and that we're prepared and know about these lead times so that we can.
It really is. It goes back to, the CMGC exemption we did a year ago.
Right.
And this is that value of all of a sudden the duration of getting this material extended because of just that supplier's capacity and demand. And so we were able to react very quickly.
Right.
And if we were in a different methodology, we would find out after we're fully designed that, okay, we can start, but we can't, our construction duration would be much longer. So-
Right, or we'd like to use this, but now we can't
Right.
because we'll never get it in time.
Exactly.
So, yeah, no, it's good to see this all in action.
Yeah, very much.
But do you foresee that we'll have even more products like that as we move along that are going to be slow to get in?
It is very possible, you know, as you look out there in the, what we see happening in the overall market. There are some other things, materials that come in, especially from overseas, with shipping issues. And in this case, sometimes it's just purely the demand. And it varies with the different materials, but because the overall kind of slowdown in the production of manufacturing, the quantities of materials are not quite as readily as they were pre-COVID. And a lot of the manufacturing plants have not fully recovered to their full production rates to meet the demand. And in our case, the construction industry has not slowed down. It's continued at a very high pace. So high demand and supply is trying to keep up. And we've seen it in a few different products, elevators, steel bar joists, and in this DLT. So yeah, Bunny, I do think that there's could be other items that we will look at. We talked about the photovoltaic, the PV systems, and they have a fairly long lead time. A lot of that product comes from Asia. And so that's another one that we're actually going to be awarding here because it's a design build and a long lead item that will come up in the next month or two.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, any further questions, or do I hear a motion?
And for the motion, you could basically use the last sentence of Greg's summary.
I'll make a motion that the board authorizes the library director to signing authority up to $2,300,000 for the Redmond Library for supplier purchase award described.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. All right. I think we're up to third quarter financials. Robert.
Good afternoon, everyone. All right, so third quarter financials, this is our financial reporting through March 31st of this year. So it won't include any of the more recent expenditures that, say, Greg has talked about for the April construction projects. So if you go to the first page of that report, that's our cash reconciliation report. That's essentially our cash position modified for some of the current liabilities and assets, things like our. One thing I did want to highlight for you on this cash reconciliation report for Q3 is we've been reporting when Greg gives the reports for the construction projects. He's mentioned a DSIP, or a district supplied insurance program. So we received the bill from Brown & Brown for that. It's a 3-year insurance coverage, but the bill for it showed up at the very end of March. And so you see our accounts payable right now is quite high compared to what you might have seen in the past. About 1.8 million of that is accounted for from that DSIP program. Now, and when we get to the end of the fiscal year, almost all of that will be turned into a prepaid because it covers that 3 years in advance starting in May. So basically the expenses that we will incur this fiscal year are just for the May and June coverage of that insurance plan.
Mhm.
Everything else will be prepaid through to the next 2.8 years.
Okay.
Okay, moving to the next page is the financial highlights. So as a reminder, this one really is just a summary page to help kind of parse through the remaining pages of this report. So if at any point you wanted to reference each of these funds, the actual numbers are listed on the back pages of the report. So this is 3/4 of the way through the financial period, fiscal year. 75% would be our benchmark, more or less, for things that we would see as a regular expenditure. And then we kind of highlight things that go either higher or lower than that 75% benchmark, so that we ask ourselves, do we understand why? As far as resources in the general fund, we are 99% resourced and on track in current and previously levied taxes to hit 100% of the budgeted amounts by the end of the fiscal year. In terms of expenses, so overall expenditures, we tracked to about 60% of budget. And in a couple instances, those expenses, personal services, they were slightly under due to a few open positions that we have. So that's why that one is tracking slightly less than 75%. Materials and services overall, tracking at about 55% of budgeted. And we start digging in the lower bullet points of that report as to questions. In a couple instances, we do have expenses tracking above that 75% benchmark. The first one is our budgeted amount for auditing. We came in just slightly above that, about $3,600 above the budgeted amount for audits. That was the audit that was conducted in September of this year, and it did run higher because there were additional unanticipated expenses related to the complexity of the first fiscal year with bond funds. And $3,600 is well within the additional unanticipated contingency that we set aside in the budget. Postage and freight is tracking higher than 75%, and the reason for that is that one does not expense continuously throughout the year. Typically what we do is we make a couple of big prepaid purchases against the postage machine, and so you see these, it runs low, then it runs high, then time catches up to it, and then it's tracking again. So right now, we're not anticipating that will exceed budget by the end of the fiscal year. It will be coming in or under. As far as expenses that tracked to less than 75% spent, all of those were explainable and understandable. A couple to highlight for you are our contractual services. So that is an area where we try and anticipate all of the contractual services that we might need in any given year. That includes all of our library programming, coaching, advertising and marketing. Everything kind of gets lumped into that contractual services line item in the report. And so we're tracking below that, but that is one that typically we would see ourselves going under that because we budget for a healthy amount of contingency in that budget amount. Several were underrun because of pandemic related reasons. So things like education and travel, obviously, meeting support, staff day was postponed for this fiscal year. Printing expenses, volunteer recognition, all of those ran lower for one reason or another that ultimately ties back to the fact that with issues related to pandemic, we weren't running exactly where we expected we would be when we put together the budget for this fiscal year. And then there are some items that are just variable expenditures. And again, we just have to kind of anticipate where we think it will happen when we put the budget together. So things like non-employee labor. This year we had minimal need for temporary labor, handyman services, things like that. Supplies, that varies with annual needs. Same with recruitment, staff recognition, vehicle, fuel and usage, things like that vary from year to year and vary from period to period. And then to round out for general fund, the capital contingency, about 12% of that budget expended. Most of that is accounted for out of facilities and IT. So we had a production studio furniture related to the video production studio that we've set up in admin. District furniture replacement projects that were identified as part of the proposal for last year. And then planned purchases for equipment and computers and IT. As far as IT is concerned, we will actually see additional capital funds expended in Q4 for just taking advantage of some timing for those purchases. So we will see a bit more of that expended, but still within budget. Okay, so moving from general fund to the reserve fund. So reserve fund, we're looking at 98% resourced. And as a reminder, this balance reflects that supplemental budget that was passed in November by the board in order to transfer the costs of the central library land purchase over to the capital projects fund. So, so this balance is essentially the budgeted fund that was approved at the beginning of this fiscal year after that supplemental budget was passed. The mobile library project is planned to be carried forward into next fiscal year. So you don't see any expenditures in this report, and we don't expect to see any capital outlay for the reserve fund for the remainder of the fiscal year. Looking at the grants fund report. This one, we're resourced at about 83%. So that's tracking well. Really, the main reason that it's not higher is just because our carry forward from last year was not as high as we anticipated when we put the budget together. And you'll see again this year, when we're figuring out how much money we have left in those grant funds, a lot of times it is as educated a guess as we have at this point in the process before all funds have been expended on a particular grant. So there's still another month and a half worth of expenditures usually when the budget gets put in front of you. And that's that variation there. Expenses on grant funds. So IMLS grant, ready to read 2020 to 2021, a novel idea. Those are the three main sources of expenditures in this report. There are some other smaller grant expenditures as well. And at this point in the year, the IMLS grant is fully expended. So that was 2-year funds. Moving on to the capital projects. We are 99% resourced here. And again, this balance reflects that transfer of the cost of the Roble Lane land purchase into the capital projects fund. So that balance is adjusted accordingly. The expenditures here, we're looking at 51% of overall budget. The capital outlay includes things like owners' representatives fees, architect fees, the CMGCs. Our materials and services include everything from meals and travel related reimbursables for the contractors to that DSIP expenditure. And in fact, 1.8 million of that 1.844 million is the DSIP expenditure for activity this period. And finally, we look at the debt service fund. So this is the fund we have budgeted for payment of interest and principal on the bonds. And so what you see here is 93% resource and on track for 100% resource from tax assessments. And then the interest payment that was made in December is recorded here as a previous period expenditure. And then in Q4, pretty much within the next 30 days, we'll be making payment on our first principal payment as well as our second interest payment on the bond. Okay. And that's all of the funds. Do you have any questions?
Any questions, anyone?
I have one really quick question, Robert, on the mobile library project. Is that the vans? And we do have one. I saw there's 2 others, I guess, in the next budget.
That is the mobile library vans. So these are the ones that are the project that was identified in the FY 2021 budget for outreach and bringing library services out into the community. Once we started scoping that, and also given the timing of availability for vehicles right now with the supply chain delays, it became clear a couple months ago that we were not going to be able to fully scope the requirements, place the order, and receive the vehicle before the end of this fiscal year. So that's why you're going to see that carry over into next fiscal year. And you'll see it in today's budget proposal.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that. Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I'd entertain a motion to accept the third quarter financial report.
I move to accept the third quarter financial account.
Okay. There's a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Report is accepted. Thank you, Robert. Thank you. Do we have time to do this?
Yes.
Okay, let's have Mark's report on the VoIP project.
Yeah.
Or do you want to do an introduction?
Yeah, I'll just lead it off, because we gave you the information. I'll kind of give you the breakdown, and then if you have any questions, we'll hand it to Mark. But basically, we need to upgrade our phone system, and that is research that Mark and his team have been doing over the last year. And as I mentioned in our email for this, we will be signing up for a 3-year package, and that's why it's going over my expenditure limit. But the good news is we'll actually be saving money year by year over our current phone system. Plus, this includes all new telephones. So that's the really quick, my level of understanding of it. And I'll let you entertain any other questions. I'm going to hand over to Mark.
Please, sir.
Yeah.
Mark says, this is the result of 1.5 years of research. No.
Yes.
I wanted to say before Mark starts is this was an excellent summary. I was actually able to understand the most of all of this. So thank you, Mark, for this summary.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, it was,
I wanted to write it that way.
okay. Yeah, no, I found it very easy to understand, and the advantages were clearly brought out, why it's needed and what advantages this offers over what we have now.
Yeah,
And
this transition is a no-brainer because
Yeah.
literally everybody's done it, we're doing it.
Did you contact other businesses
Oh,
or
yeah.
other organizations that had used this next to the?
Yeah, we talked to, well, Vonage is a big carrier amongst the Fortune 500s. Ring Central, you hear Ring Central all the time. And another one called OnSip. And we spoke with all of them at length before we got to this point. And now we're just in the process of testing, what we kind of chose. As long as that testing goes well, I'm happy with the product. I think everybody will be. It's just the natural evolution of phones. And not everybody will have to have a phone. They can have software on the computer. And it's phone anyway.
yeah, this
Plus,
is,
you can see where they're at.
And Mark, for the purpose of their motion, do you have the overall cost for the 3-year contract? Sorry.
Yeah, see, it would be exactly $135,036.
no, jeez.
So what we might be looking for here is a motion to authorize me to enter into contract with Nextivia for amount not to exceed $136,000 for a 3-year contract.
Okay.
I'd like to reinforce that what Todd said. Essentially, that's going to eliminate about $18,000 over that 36 months of costs that we currently are paying for the existing phone system.
Yeah, that's substantial. That's really good. And it's more functional and all the
yes.
advantages.
Feature rich. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I would entertain a motion
I'll make a motion that we authorize the library director to, if I'm saying this right, proceed with the negotiations. Is that correct? For VoIP telecommunications contract over a 3-year period, not to exceed 136,000. Did I say
Yeah,
that?
if you need it, Nextiva is the name of the company.
Mhm. Do I need to say that in the motion?
Yeah.
So I will amend my motion to say, to allow the library director to negotiate with Nextiva for a 3-year contract for VoIP, not to exceed $136,000.
All right, do I hear a second? I'll second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Mark.
Excellent work, Mark. Excellent.
Yeah, no,
Thank you very much.
that's great. Okay. We are now returning to our budget committee meeting.
Actually, you're adjourning, you need to
Oh,
adjourn the regular
Okay,
session.
all right, thank you. All right, I'm going to adjourn the regular session. And I'm going to call the, oh, there we go. And the regular board meeting will resume following the budget committee meeting. And now I will call the budget committee meeting in order.
We'll get her face set up.
Yeah. Hi, guys. I know, it's great, yeah. Great to see you all.
We were worried we might not see anybody.
And have a good trip.
Okay,
I gotta
thanks so
step
much.
out and I will see you in June.
All right, sounds good. Thanks so much,
Thanks,
Greg.
Greg.
Absolutely. Bye now.
Okay. Here we are together again. It's only been a year, right? Okay. So, okay. Huh?
Don't forget the board members.
I will. Okay, I would like to call the roll for the budget committee. Erica Scapel,
She
she cannot attend. Betsy Tucker. Wayne Kovacs,
Present.
Pat Minnie. Here. Victoria Gordon. Here. All right. Cynthia Claridge. Here. Bunny Thompson,
Here.
and Ness.
Here.
Ray Meow, not present, and Ann Malkin, present. Okay. All right, as you recall, our first order of business is to elect a budget chair. We'll chair the budget section of the meeting.
I'd like to nominate Bunny Thompson.
Okay. Do I hear any other? nominations?
Second that.
Okay. All right, hearing no other nominations, all those in favor of Bunny chairing the meeting? Aye. Okay. Opposed? Bunny, you are the chair.
Okay, I'm going to have to lean on Todd to tell me where to begin.
You can see if we have any public comments.
Say that again?
Yeah, see if we have any public comments.
Yes. Are there any public comments on this proposed budget? Although I thought this was a closed meeting.
No, it's not a closed meeting.
Okay.
Open.
Are there any public comments on the 2022-23 proposed budget? If no comments, we'll move ahead.
Okay, then I will take over from here for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, welcome, everybody. This is how I mark my aging is by each budget cycle, so.
Because it does age us, right?
Rings on a tree.
So I'm going to kind of go in here. I guess I'll start with overall and just kind of give you a sense as we look at this. We are coming out of as you can imagine, a 2-year phase of going through the pandemic. And it's had some interesting ramifications on our budget. And a lot of that has to do with, we have been underspending for the last 2 years for multiple reasons. Just for the fact that we were closed for a portion of it. Because we've been, lately it's because we've been unable to secure supplies when we need it, such as buying vehicles. And then it's also changes that have happened as far as staffing, that's impacted us as well. We have not been able to fill positions as quickly as we have in the past. So overall, budget-wise, it means we're actually in a very strong phase right now where our income is up. We were actually saving money over the past 6 years in our general fund in anticipation of growing with new facilities. And that's a case you'll see here that we are carrying forward a large balance in our general fund. All that's good news for our future planning. And so that'll come in there. And then obviously a big piece is we did pass a bond in 2020 and we're in the middle of some major construction projects. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that. So let me, this is going to go slower than I thought. Okay. I want to jump right into what we're looking at right now, because we're coming out of this kind of slowdown phase with the pandemic. We don't have a lot of major initiatives going this year. We're really trying to get back up to speed. We're just now getting back to live story times. We've just started at our first live novel idea in 2 years. So things are really ramping up right now. And that's kind of what we're focusing on, is just kind of preparing for that. So that you won't see a lot of major initiatives in this budget. But obviously the big one is the capital fund. This $40 million for next year, that just covers the next 12 months of our projects. And during that 12 months, we will be starting construction on the Redmond Library. We will be starting remodels, and that will start in February of 2023. And we will start remodels for Lapine and Sisters in January of 2023. So our first projects are starting to roll. And that's what most of this funding is for. This is also for planning around our other buildings as well. We'll still be doing work on the Central Library. That has been delayed because of our inability to build on the north property that we were looking at last year. And so that is something our board is in the middle of right now, is looking at options. And the options are to try to get the neighbors to work with us, to wait for the city to master plan that area, or to look at new properties. And the board is entertaining all three of those at this point. So that kind of slows down some of the spending that we would have been doing in this fiscal year. Any questions on that? Because that's a big piece of what we're doing. Yes.
So did you put money down on that property? I mean, is that in some kind of?
Yeah, we purchased that property.
or something? Oh, you did purchase it.
We purchased, we own the
Yeah.
property, and that, we'll see that in the budget. I've actually, when we get to the reserve fund, I've actually budgeted in a what if scenario. If we decide to move on to a different property, we actually need to, the library needs to purchase that property back from the bond. So I put that in there, that we would actually have to, basically, we're just transferring funds from the bond funds to our general fund. So we'll talk about that. Another. A really big piece of what we're doing is, oh, I should see the picture too. All right, technology is not going to work.
Todd, can I do the driving from the keyboard?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yes.
Thank you, Ralph.
You need one of those giant cans like on the
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah, I mean, move this
You
over.
want that photo? Oh, you want to move it over? Can do that.
There you go. So reclassification of library materials. This is a huge project that we're undertaking, and this comes from, this has actually been a long time coming, looking at the fact that the average person that comes into the library has absolutely no idea how to find something. Everything is done currently for nonfiction on the Dewey Decimal System. And there are some big flaws in that. A big piece is that was developed in the 1870s. And a lot of the biases from the 1870s carry forward to today. A good example is all books on religion are in the 100s. And what, 200s? That's why I don't let me do that anymore. Even I can't understand it. So all the religion books are in the 200s, with Christianity taking 200 to 299, and then the rest of the world's religions get the rest of that. And I kind of exaggerate a little bit. I think it goes to 290. But yes, but still, that type of thing is a challenge. And what we're trying to do is find ways for people to intuitively find materials when they come in. That's why this picture is here. If you could just lower it a little bit. Where rather than finding the Dewey number and figuring out where to go to find books on hiking, we can categorize them very simply under outdoors, and you go to that section and you're going to find the books that you're looking for. And I am greatly simplifying that whole process. This also will actually be recataloguing our whole. That includes our fiction as well, where we will be putting things in large categories, like all the mystery books will be together, all the sci-fi books will be together. It's something that a lot of libraries have moved to, and they immediately see a fairly large increase in circulation because it's much easier for people to browse. Really, if you want to get a sense of what it looks like, just go into a bookstore, and that's what it'll look like. Where you walk into a bookstore, you say, oh, there's history. I can go look through there.
So is this why when I go to the library and I find a book and I am looking for another book that I think is kind of in the same topic, it's like 2 rows down or another aisle down, and I'm like, why aren't they together? So it's that, okay.
It is. So that's a great example, because actually, for those of you who love Dewey, it actually will still be there. What will happen is, a good example for that is gardening, where you could go to gardening and landscaping books maybe in one area, and then 5 rows away are going to be books on plants. And what we'll be able to do is have a category that says gardening. All of those are going to be in the same section, and you'll be able to find them that way. So that, all that sounds great and simple. The fact is, we own over 240,000 items. That means we're going to have to touch every single one of them, relabel every single one of them, change everything in our catalogs, and it's at a big expense. So that is what we're proposing here. $250,000 for reclassifying that. That piece is actually also something that will take a lot of time as well. So part of this is actually hiring a company that will actually come in and do all that labeling for us. So that's a really nice piece for us. The goal is, and the reason we have it coming up this year, is we'd like to get this started so that we can start doing these by branch, so that when they reopen after remodels, the system is there. And then we're taking advantage of the time we were closed. We're getting that done, and people will see it once they come into those new buildings. So
I
I,
think all your shelving is gonna change too, right? Because you can't.
Exactly.
Everything, yeah.
yeah, it'll impact what type of shelving we have. And so that's another reason we want to get it done now is because we want to purchase the shelving that's going to fit the library that we're remodeling. And I would say, yes, go ahead. Fine.
Will you be hiring more people for this? Does it take more employees?
No. This, because we'll be hiring a third party to actually come in and do all this work for us. If we didn't do it this way, this would be a big load on our staff, especially the time when we're moving a lot of stuff. So,
Okay.
Well, and when we did the children's reclassification, we did that all ourselves, right? And I can remember what a marathon effort that was, and I think people only have so many marathons in them.
yeah, the picture book, that's a great example. The picture books, when we recategorize all those, and that's a good sample of what we're moving to. That each branch, as we did it, we shut down for the day. We had all of our staff in there, plus staff from around the district come in and do that. And that only covered about half of what we did, because then you have to get all the stuff that comes in after that. So it's a big change for us, and it's going to be a big step with this budget. Okay, let's move to this one. Should look familiar. I even left the same picture from last year.
Yeah.
So a couple things happened here. This is the mobile library van that we would like to purchase. When we put it in last year, it was a lower dollar amount. And we discovered two things. One, we were way too low. The second one is there is definitely a supply chain issue with these vans. So there was no way we were going to get it done this fiscal year. So that's one of the reasons it's rolling over. After we've done after doing the research and getting some initial quotes, we now have a much more realistic budget, and it's about 250,000 for what we are trying to get from the mobile van. And that one is coming out of the reserve fund. It's money that we set aside for future projects in the past.
And will that be for one van or multiple vans?
Yeah, that's one van.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not so much the van, it's all the stuff that goes along with it that makes it a mobile library.
Okay.
Though vehicles have gotten more expensive. Yes. And Wayne, you have a question? Or was that?
My question was basically the same thing. I wondered how many of these mobile libraries we were going to get. You know, I had no idea that it would cost so much for this one. I'd envisioned a fleet of them.
Yes.
Yeah, we've gotten some early quotes back from a couple of potential vendors, and we all kind of did a little bit of recalibrating our expectations of what it would cost.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah.
This is one, though that we're budgeting for it, is also one that's ripe for grant opportunities. I think Ann Malcolm pointed out that the Beaverton Library that just got a grant.
Yeah, they just got an IMLS grant for a pilot project for a similar thing. And then I passed along one yesterday that Estacada also got one.
An LSTA.
Or LSTA grant, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that might.
and so there's a lot of people, there's a lot of interest in this, and, you know, hopefully we can learn from what other people are doing as well. And I mean, that's certainly been the case with kiosk type situations where people have some experience with these now, so we can avoid some of the problems that they encountered when we investigate these things. So I think it's really good.
Yes, Wayne.
And B, what kind of coverage will this give us?
As far as
Where will it go?
yeah.
What will it do?
I don't know, I'm gonna throw that one to Lynn. You've been working with that team on kind of what their goals are for
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is yet to be determined. I think that's another good reason to do this again over this next fiscal year while we're waiting is the team that we'll be using is are doing a lot of work with the community and looking at asset building with communities and reaching out to determine what the needs are and then where they are. And then what kind of, services can this mobile service van provide based on the input that they get. So, and they're starting that process this summer and throughout. I mean, they have been doing it, but they're really getting into it this year.
I will say, we won't be reinventing the wheel. We actually do a lot of mobile service. You may see the little,
The van.
little car outside, where our library, yeah, it's on the cover of the budget. Our librarians are constantly lugging stuff out to that and going out. A good example is last summer. All of our summer reading activities were in parks, outdoors. We did a lot with Parks and Rec. And that was a great example for us that would have changed things completely if we could have
Is
just.
this a reinvention of the bookmobile that we had in my day?
Kind of, but not so much inward where people are like in an old bookmobile, the older bookmobile, people came in and it was, like that.
Mhm.
This is more of an idea of an outward facing. You're not coming into this as much as we're coming out to you.
Got
It's
it.
more of a food truck. Yes.
Yeah.
If a food truck had a baby, this is what it would be.
But it's big.
Yeah.
A little bit bigger.
Yeah, it's bookmobile is a good analogy. It's kind of like a much more nimble bookmobile. Yeah. And really with those three, and especially with the building projects, that's kind of at our capacity at this point. We have a very innovative staff who would love to throw out lots of ideas, but we're throwing all of our ideas into the new building. So just kind of a overview of the budget process, just kind of how it works for us. Our district board sets results of what they would like to see accomplished. They rank those for us every January, and we kind of use that to build up budget projects. And through that comes from once we get direction from the board, we work with the staff, the management team, actually talking with staff, getting budget proposals from them, and that's kind of all of that goes into building this budget. Your duties as a budget committee, and a reminder, the entire board plus all 5 budget committee members, so it's a 10-person budget committee, to receive and review the budget document, hear the budget message, which we're doing right now. We didn't get any public comment. Ask for any additional information, so do not hesitate to ask questions. That's your job. And then discuss and revise the budget as needed. At the end, we'll need you to approve the budget or decide to have another meeting and approve the property tax rate. Okay, so let's see if there's anything. Let's go to this page.
Okay.
Next one.
When-
Go back up a little bit. Here you go. Just a couple of things here. Actually, let's go up a little bit. I want to see the chart. Oops, no, I'm sorry, down. All right, down. I want to see this whole thing. There you go. So everything we're doing is based on projected property taxes, and I give the same speech every year, but even I have to say it to myself every year. So basically, what we do is all of our taxes are based on the value of all the property in Deschutes County in January of 2022. Unfortunately, we do the budget process now. The county assessor spends all the way until October to figure out how much the property was worth in January of 2022. So we have to do an estimate. And I get that number from the assessor where he's looking at what he knows. He thinks it's going to go up about 5.8%. So I have to take January 2021 value, increase that by 5.8%. Our tax rate is 55 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. And also figuring that people are paying their taxes at about a 97% rate. So that's how we get to this projected number of $16,024,316. Other factors that are coming up in here, our personnel costs are going up by 13%. So it's a big jump for us. Cost of living increase this year was very high. It was 7.5%. And we also are adding some additional staff as well. And then I've got on that page our PERS rates. They're the same as last year, and that's factored in there as well.
Have you, and you're using Scott's full 5.8% estimate?
I am. Yes, thank you for asking.
Yeah.
In the past, so I should start, as you know, I usually am very conservative. And this year I'm using his full rate because he's been pretty much spot on. We also have, as we will see, a very large carry forward in our general fund. So we have the ability to basically take that risk of taking his full amount. If he is wrong and he's 1% below, we will be well funded. So we're in good shape there. If it was a tighter year, carrying forward as much, I would be much more conservative with that number there. So this is the big chart. I wonder if we can shrink it just a little bit.
I can try.
Yeah, we gotta move everything.
You want me to zoom out? Or
Just
zoom in?
click one here.
Yep, I can.
Just one button. There you go. Oh, no, yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Perfect. So this is the.
Just
Yes,
ignore
sir.
that.
Oh, come on.
Sorry. I can't close it. It's just sitting there.
I think it's because there's a critical patch that they just pushed to everything.
All right.
Yeah, every machine in the district.
We're
Cross
working
your
on.
fingers that we don't have to reboot.
Don't worry about. You don't need to know about 2024 right now.
Yeah.
So just a reminder of what you're looking at here. This is this current year's budget. Here's how much I'm estimating that we're actually spending right now. Or how much I estimate we actually will spend because I have to go through to the end of the year. And then this is the actual proposed budget that we are looking at for this year. And then I project out 2 more years just to give you a sense of if we do this, are we going to be broke in 2 years? We will never know because it's behind the counter. Okay, yes, and so let's go back to where it was. Oh, the other piece you should know is our board has a policy that we will always carry forward at least 17% of our budget forward. And we actually will be carrying forward $12 million. We only need to carry forward 2.9 million to meet that 17%. So we're well above that.
For reference, 17% is 2 months worth of expenditures.
Yeah, there you go.
And Todd, is it okay if we ask questions as you go along?
Please do.
Okay. Projections for the future years. What impact if the city adopts the affordable housing tax district proposals that they presented to us last? Is that reflected in these estimates or for future years? And when would those take effect and what effect would that have?
I don't think it's going to have a major effect on us. It will have an effect. It's probably balanced out in the way I did this though, because
I noticed you went way down to 3%.
I go down to 3% each year.
Right.
And if we continue even close to where we are right now, then I'm I way underestimated what we're going to get.
Okay.
So that shouldn't be an impact. And it's a very realistic thought that we could be in a recession right now. And that could impact us. Usually what happens with the property taxes, that kind of lags behind another year. So we would probably have another year before we start worrying about that.
Right.
Well, especially because right now he's basing it on January 2022 numbers.
22, right, yeah.
Lost what year we're in.
Yeah.
And so we're probably good. We're good for this budget cycle, and the future ones would be the ones to be concerned about.
Right.
And
Okay.
Todd, how does your ending fund balance compare to before the pandemic? Just out of curiosity, was 12 million, 11, 10 kind of in the ballpark for prior
That
years?
is a good question. I gotta find my old budget. Sorry, I was
Right
do this
here.
every year.
I actually pulled it this year.
So like 2020 or 2019 is kind of,
Yeah, we're actually above what we were. I don't know about 2019, but we've actually been going up. Yeah, this bottom line number has been going up for a couple of reasons, because I was conservative and we got more money in taxes than I anticipated. And then those last 2 years of low spending, it's just been going up. It's the weirdest thing that I've experienced in my library work, because libraries are always trying to find money, and all of a sudden we've been going up. It's really good news for us, because once we get all these buildings completed, we are going to have to hire a lot of new staff to cover much larger facilities. And that's where this money is going to come from. That's kind of what we've been building towards.
you're doing an excellent job.
Yeah, well, the world is kind of helping me with that.
Yeah.
It's not the way I choose to save money, but it's how we've got.
Todd, I have a question, and I couldn't hear everyone exactly, but if we do have to go out and buy a new piece of property and change what our bond budget looked like, how does that affect this budget?
If we bought new property, that would come out of the bond funds. And that would not affect this general budget.
Okay.
When we get to the bond funds budget, it's actually covered in there. We have enough contingency to cover that. Where it will show up is in a reserve fund, because if we did buy property, we'd have to reimburse the bond for the Rebel Road property.
Okay.
Yes. So that's a reminder. Everything you see here is the general fund. A reserve fund is funded from money that we transfer out of the general fund. We are not making any transfers into the reserve fund because usually that's for remodeling buildings, upgrading buildings, or building new buildings. We're in the middle of that with the bond fund, and we have sufficient funds in the general fund and the reserve fund. So that's why we won't be transferring in the near future. Just kind of give you a sense of where we are as far as income, our interest. I actually am probably being very conservative with the interest, since the interest rates are going up, and we have a large balance. Fines and fees, as you may recall, we dropped all fines. Late fines, we do still charge if somebody loses the book. And a lot of this actually comes from printing costs, where that's part of the fees. But that's actually been staying fairly steady over the last couple of years. It's been hard to track since we dropped them, because we went into the pandemic a year later.
We did hit the mark this year, though. This fiscal year, we're right there.
Okay, yeah, so it didn't drop off the face of the earth completely. So that's where I'm kind of keeping it around 50,000. Just to point out this miscellaneous income, we actually share a staff person with the Library Foundation, and they reimburse us for their hours. And that's where most of this miscellaneous income comes from. The charges for services, that's actually a partnership we have with Jefferson County Library and Crook County Library. We share the same library catalog with them. They are on the same ebooks and downloadable ebooks. And we charge them for every checkout that one of their customers does. And that's where that funds comes back in there, which helps us for small books. The law library, that's a contract we have with the county to run their law library services, and they give us $150,000 a year for that. We talked about where the tax income comes from. Personnel, as I mentioned, is going up about 13%. A big chunk of that is a couple of things. Cost of living increase. We also this year had to up salaries for positions that had fallen behind the market. And that's something that we used to study once every 3 years. We'd go back. We're actually starting to do that once a year because volatile right now in the job market that we need to actually keep track of that. Especially on some types of positions have changed dramatically in the last 2 years. If you imagine, the world's kind of moved online. So having more IT help, social media, those types of things, those jobs have gone up a lot in cost over the last few years. Our insurance is actually, with all the inflation we talk about, our insurance is actually only going up by 2%, which is kind of amazing. And that's good news for us. It's going up, it looks more significant here, but that includes our additional staffing as well. So, and the additional costs. Materials and services. We've got that moving up, and that's kind of reflecting are kind of moving out of this low activity period into more direct service with the public, and again ramping up our services. So getting that number back up. And capital outlay, looks like a big drop in what we're doing. Again, a lot of our capital outlay type effort is going into bond funded remodels and upgrades. So kind of going these future years, again, we kind of hit on it. I'm very conservative about estimating that our taxes will go up by 3% a year. It will probably be more than that. Also, with staffing, I'm estimating a 7% increase each year. Just again, kind of doing I would say the highest level that possibly could be over that period. I will say we are in the middle of union negotiations, so some of that full information about our next steps of where we're going to land for cost of living for the future years and this year. So that's a rough estimate of what we're doing. I'm trying to see if there's anything else significant there in that estimate. But even with that, and probably this is one that we see every year where we see this number drop. That's usually because of my conservative budgeting, because I've had that number drop for the last, 13 years, but the last 6 years, and you see it's actually goes up. And that's just my style of budgeting, just a little more conservative. Any questions on any of that? It's kind of a lot to go in there. Any online questions, Bonnie or Ann?
Oh, I don't have anything.
Okay. Then the next pages we're going through, this really is just a breakdown of our overall costs in the general fund by department. And we'll go refine it further by department through each page, just to give you a sense of where our money is going and kind of what categories. First budgets or system budget, that's basically our administrative costs. Every other year, we have election expenses. We will have board elections in May of 2023, and 3 of our 5 board members will be up for election, which will probably raise us to the full amount of that anticipated cost. And please stop me at any point if you have any questions on that. Business services. This is actually probably one of our, between this, IT and technical services, our biggest budgets. And behind all of this are a ton of other expenses. But this is kind of the general breakdown by category of where this money is going. Rent includes the East Bend Library plus storage facility. We have a storage unit. Utilities includes all utilities, water, gas, electric. And I'm trying to see if there's anything else here that might. Janitorial is actually one of our biggest expenses, and that covers services. We have an outside agency that comes and cleans all of our buildings, including this building. Okay. We've got our HR budget. I'm trying to see if there's anything. Thinking that this educational, they have a high education and travel. That's where we put any all-day staff day. That's where that would be. So that's why it's a larger expense than you'll see in most departments. Recruitment is about where it normally is, but we will be doing a lot of recruitment over the next year.
And I was gonna ask how that number compares with prior years, if you're bumping it up or sounds like leaving it the same and that'll be adequate.
It's about 10%, 20% higher than the current fiscal year.
Last year was 19,200.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we have increased that because we're doing a lot more hiring for a couple of reasons. We're having a lot more turnover in our frontline positions, though we're getting a lot of interest in those, so that's good. And then for some of like our managerial positions, those are an accounting position. Those are very hard for us to recruit. So we're having to spend a lot more effort in those areas.
Yeah, and so things like advertisement or special skills testing falls under this recruitment fee.
Now, is the safe, oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong. I'm confusing myself, I'm sorry, never mind. It's in the wrong, but I was comparing years and I saw COVID expenditures in this one and I was confused because they're not in here. So.
Yes. Yeah, we still have a little bit of a budget for that, but it wasn't significant enough to call it out.
It's kind of rolled up in the consulting.
Yes. Let's move to the community relations. Our advertising, a lot of the advertising that's shifted. That's more social media, more targeted advertising on Facebook, Google Ads, as opposed to some of the more traditional services. Printing expenses, just point out that we just looked at our third quarter expenses this year and printing is way down. That's because we weren't printing the monthly guide, events guide, until I think last month was the first one we had this year. So that would be back this year.
Yeah, and the proposed printing budget is lower than this last fiscal year based on some of the lessons learned.
Yes. That's on programming. A little bit. Because of
You can say it out loud.
Oh. So programming's up a tad bit because number one, we're hoping to get back in person, which we have started. So now we're in person and we're also online for some programs. So doing hybrid, which is great. And then also we're hoping to start some more family-oriented programs beginning next March. We would be hiring an additional programming person to focus on youth and family. So we're just paying for them for like half a year, but there's some additional budget in there to do those family-oriented, youth-oriented type programs, which we haven't done.
I want to point out last year's budget, we ended up hiring this child's mother. So it was pretty funny. Okay. As you can guess, a lot of what we do is IT is kind of the backbone of everything we do. So this is a big budget for us. And I'm getting that. Here we go. I've got last year's to help with any comparisons. A lot of the shifts you'll see in this budget is just kind of basically acknowledging that the way we operate is different. And a big piece of that has to do with purchasing of software. That world has really moved from buying a piece of software and installing it on a server to buying a subscription to the software that exists in the cloud, and that kind of shifts the way some of our spending goes. So that would be a big piece of any kind of shifts that you're seeing this year. That's why a lot of our contractual has changed a little bit. Let's see if there's. I shouldn't look at last year's.
Well, it's hard to look at last year's, but if you,
yes.
Like the bottom, server equipment, if you look at that, that's another one. We don't run as many physical servers anymore. We virtualize them. They either run in the cloud or they run in one of our own private clouds inside. And that lowers that cost in the hundreds of thousands of dollars range.
And so that's why this year there's a new category called IT maintenance, and that kind of reflects some of that shift to the cloud-based software. Okay.
Where would the VoIP system, what budget would that be in?
It would be under the telecommunications, telecom.
Okay.
Yeah, so that category right there, it says telecommunication services.
Yeah.
It will be in there.
Okay. all right.
Essentially, it's reflected as a subscription service in there,
Right, okay.
like
Just wanted
Spotify
to-
or anything. Except for it's more expensive. Just to clarify, we are already running this over at P. We've been running it for 20 years. It's just that we're running it in-house, like I noted in my document.
Right. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
shorthand, but not very
That
effective.
was for the sake of Lynn, who
Easy.
doesn't believe we're running voices right.
He's working with me about something else.
All right.
Okay, library services, that's basically covers all of our direct library services. When you come in, you check out a book, that's the department you're dealing with. Most of this has to do with, let's see, is the courier still with them?
No, that's in operations.
Okay, they have probably the largest staff. That's where you're going to see the largest education and travel budget. And not much more to say about that one, unless you have any questions.
If we expand,
And I totally just made that up. Operations is the one I thought I was talking about, library services.
Yes.
Sorry, I confused myself. Library services has to do, that's all of our librarians.
Right.
And a lot of the work they do is going out into the community. And so they will send them the most often of anybody else to professional conferences. That's where their education and travel is.
There's also a lot of mileage reimbursement there because they're
Yes.
doing a lot of driving around the district.
Yes, yeah, we like them to get out and about.
This one has a high supplies budget relative to most of the other departments, but remember, this also covers things like summer with the library. So all of the materials that they use for their different events show up there in supplies.
Well, not all, because we do have the summer at the library.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Not summer with the library, but all the rest of the year when they do outreach and materials for that.
Winter, fall, and spring with the library.
Right.
Okay, so my
yes.
question would be, as we get close to completing these buildings that we're building.
Yeah.
And we're going to be adding to our processing materials capacity. And I assume that would have big implications for the software that we're using, because I mean, when we originally purchased that software, we talked about the ability to be able to add functionality and all kinds of modules. So where would that sort of thing show up in the budget?
Right now, are you talking about automated materials handling?
Well, yeah, and any other opportunities that might present themselves because of that.
Most of that is going to show up actually in the bond budget at this point.
Okay,
Because we'll be buying equipment through the bond. And that is also automated materials handling would basically be a machine that you put a book in the book drop, it goes down a conveyor belt, automatically checks the book in and sorts it into a cart for us. And we'll have that ability with the new buildings. Oh, okay, and so basically that will show up once we start getting those buildings.
okay, so
going.
that won't be in this part of the
No.
budget, okay.
Probably in the coming year's budgets, you'll see some changes. Yes.
The program that we did several years ago, the tagging of the material, is that part of this, and will that help to ease the processing?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that was the foundational work to get into this process. Yeah,
that was
I think
step
that was a
one.
vast
yeah.
project and improvement.
Yeah, exactly. And so now we're like poised to be able to take advantage of that, all that.
Take it to the
Wait,
next
wait till you
step.
see what we got coming in the next couple of years. You're gonna love it.
I can tell you that when we shut down, the first day we shut down for the pandemic, we gave the public 1 day notice. And probably wasn't the best thing to happen in a pandemic, but people just flooded the library. And we had just installed the RFID system, the tagging system, probably a couple weeks before that.
And we had just gone live, I think, totally, completely, maybe that January, February
Yes.
Oh,
of 2019.
So
and
that
shut
day,
down.
we had people checking out 20 books at a time, and it was so nice to be able to have them check out 20 all at once and hand them to them and send them off.
85.
Has it cut down on our losses?
We definitely have the ability. One, when somebody walks out the door, we know what went off and what they have, which helps in order to say, Wayne, would you like to check out that?
Yeah,
Gone with the Wind?
I've set the thing off a few times.
Yeah. That part, it's kind of hard for us to track because of the last 2 years. We do not have good comparison numbers because of the pandemic to be able to say, because just our checkout rate overall dropped by about 25%. I'm not quite sure where it is right now, but it's moving back up, but it's hard, that makes it hard to compare. Okay, any questions on this? One you may have a question on. We do hire a security patrol company, mainly for the downtown library, because we have a lot of issues here. They also patrol our parking lot. And then they do some evening patrols where they sweep through the area, and they do check on our north property about once a week just to see what's going on out there.
There's VC Courier you were asking for.
Oh, there's Kurt. Okay. And that's just move our books around. Okay, let's go to technical services, just pointing out that this is where our book budget is, and that's for not just books, for all of our digital materials, our online databases are in there. This is where we are taking the money out for the reclassification that I highlighted at the beginning of this discussion for the new catalog. And if there's anything else here, most of this is everything that kind of supports what we do to get materials cataloged in the computer and out to the public. E-services, and that's all, as we say here, development for all of our online services, web design, content. Our Sierra is the software that runs all of our library circulation, keeps track of all of our library customers. So that's a pretty big backbone of what we do. Our cloud and subscription services, those are all the great databases that you have access to. That's where we're tracking. And let's see, public services. This is kind of the overarching budget over a couple of the other budgets we just looked at. So public services, Lynn heads public services and oversees technical service, operational services, library services, and e-services. So this is kind of a carryover of support for those departments. And then we have our Summer with the Library program, and that's basically cost for running that program. It's one of the biggest programs we do every year. And that's okay. So that's any other general fund questions? The reserve fund, so remember, this is money that we have set aside in the past for future library facilities, for major capital projects that we want to fund. And there's a couple of things happening here, two things actually, that I'm proposing for this budget. And the big one is if we do decide to purchase a different piece of land for the central library, we will be required to pay the bond back for the north property. And that's where that would be. So it's basically an accounting procedure of moving it from one fund to another, but this is, we need to budget for it. So that's the majority of this, the $10,000 plus $135,000 for the actual cost of the property. $10,000 would just be miscellaneous fees that we incurred while we were purchasing the property. The rest of this is the $250,000 for that library mobile van that we talked about. And that's all we have planned for the reserve fund. The grant funds, I just will highlight that, as always, the only thing I budget is for grants that we absolutely know about. So if we get a grant somewhere in the middle of the year for something that we weren't expected or don't know about right now, that would be a supplemental budget we do with the board. Ready to read is money that actually comes from the state. The state gets federal funds, and the state legislature actually has a program called Ready to Read, where their goal is to fund, I'm not sure if they're getting quite to $1, but in the past it was to try to give $1 per child throughout Oregon to go to libraries to support early literacy initiatives and summer reading programs. And so that is one we have talked about in the past, where it was on the federal budget, it was due to be slashed, and the Congress kept it funded over the years. So that's part of why we started building a summer with a library budget separate from this, in anticipation that it might go away. The good news is it hasn't gone away. So, and then it's on a different year cycle. It's on an actual calendar year cycle, and we're on a fiscal year, and that's why we're always running two of them at the same time. A novel idea is funded through the Library Foundation. They get donations, they get sponsorships, and they put that money directly towards our novel idea program. You will see that we have greatly increased the spending on that for next year, because next year will be the 20th year of a novel idea. And I think Chantal and her team have some pretty exciting stuff planned. So we expect to spend a lot more next year. Collection development is, and youth initiatives are two kind of old funds that are slowly dwindling. We're trying to spend those down. So they're just a carry forward. We do get some money from the foundation when people give directly towards those initiatives. We're not actively seeking funds for that. That's why you see the lower funds coming in, because I'm kind of trying to spend these two down. And that's all. Thank you. That is all we have for our grant funds for this year. Any questions on that? Okay. Now this fund, I hope you appreciate what I did, which was put the largest dollar amount in the entire budget with the least amount of information for you. Really, all we did is we took how much money we have left in the bond fund, which is, it's going to be about 209 million. Just knowing on a spending schedule for the projects, what we expect to be spending next year, which is going to be about $40 million. And as I highlighted earlier, that's the big things that are coming next year are the start of the Redmond building, Lapine and Sisters. Along with that are design work for Sunriver. We have put on pause any work for East Bend and downtown Bend until we have certainty with what's going on with the central library, because we can't really do anything with those two until the central library is completed. I expect, and included here is design work for the central library as we move forward once we have a direction from the board.
There's a land purchase also baked into that capital outlay.
Yes, okay, great, it is, okay. And that question came up earlier. So the land purchase is covered in that capital.
So Todd, if you end up buying different land,
Yes,
is the design going to remain the same, or is it based on what the land looks like?
the design would have to change. Yeah, it is based on the land. There are some things we'll carry forward. A lot of the work that we did with the architects had to do with really for them to get to know what we're trying to accomplish with the building. So that's good news, because they now know that, they understand what we're doing. They have a very good understanding of this because they're helping us design 7 buildings at once. So that part is good news, but there's a lot of it that won't carry forward. In all likelihood, we would be looking at modified building that would be less expensive to build, because we've lost money over time just through inflation. So it will look different.
What's the timeline? I mean, do you have any idea when these things are going to happen?
Well, the biggest piece is once we get direction on which way to go. It could be anywhere from a year to longer before we start breaking ground. Probably about 14 months out earliest before we start breaking ground.
Do we have any long-term plans for the East Bend Library?
The short-term plan based on the budget or in the bond was to remodel it. Unless we do something, if it turns out that we're doing a location that's that serves East Bend better, that might be the permanent location for that. It kind of remains to be seen where we end up.
Now, the longer the location and the large central library project takes, is there additional costs that will perhaps have to happen out in addition to bond capital? Just because of project costs and project changes, or is it more that the scope of your project has to shrink a bit in order to stay within that bond budget? I don't really know how that.
The answer to your question is yes. Probably a bit of both. Yes, because as costs go up, that's the first change we can affect is by changing the scope of what we're doing. And the other piece is through our library foundation, we have an active capital campaign to get outside funds to help supplement what we're doing. So if we wanted to do more, we would have to do it through that route. And that would be getting grants, getting donations. But that is kind of our time is our challenge, just because costs escalate over time.
And besides costs increasing, don't you run the risk of, I don't know, is it fines or fees if you don't expend the bond proceeds in a number of years?
Yeah, after 3 years, what happens, it's not so much a fine, what kind of is. It's basically interest that we're earning on the bond funds. The IRS will start taking.
That's right.
And so that affects, so we can't balance out the time delay with the interest we're getting. But that's kind of the simplest way to look at it. We don't actually get fined for anything. Okay. And please ask questions there because I didn't give you much information. The debt service, this is basically how we budget for paying back the money we owe. And it's pretty straightforward. Matter of fact, I wrote it out to make it as straightforward as possible. We know that we have one principal payment, 2 interest payments every year. And this is when they're going to happen, and this is how much they're going to be. So this just reflects that. And then some carry forward for us so that we can actually, because the first interest payment is always December of 2022, and that's right when the tax income starts coming in. So we need some carry forward just in case we haven't gotten the tax money. But it's pretty straightforward of how that's going to go. This is actually the number that goes to the county to figure out what they're going to put on everybody's tax assessment for us to fund the bond. Okay, the rest of the budget is going to be the state required funds for budgeting, which is basically everything you saw before dumps into those. But let's go down to, for example, everything here we saw on that 3-year chart. But let's go to the next one. I will point out that for personal services on that 3-year expenditure chart, you just saw one lump sum for personal services. This is where you see a breakdown of our staffing, which shows how many FTE we have in each level of position, how much that totals to, and then you can also see a comparison of what that looked like over the previous years, with some caveats as we switch positions. See if we have any new ones this year. I don't think we have any new ones from previous years. But we have shifted some people around, and you'll see some with zeros. We no longer have anybody in the 13N category. We shifted those. There's a few of them that we shifted. And those kind of reflect the market studies where we were underpaying. The expenditures, that's the exact same expenditures you saw in the general fund that we're looking at earlier. And the rest of these are all going to be just recaps of everything we looked at earlier. The only one I'll draw your attention to is the LB1 at the very end. There you go. This is actually a form that we're not required to put out until after you approve the budget, but I calculated anyway for you just because it's the only place where you see all of our funds combined. Gives you a sense of the overall look at what we're doing. Oh, that's page 31. And as you can see, over the last 2 years, we're significantly higher than we were in 20 and 21, and that's all bond. And that's your budget. Any other just general questions on these? I like taking 4 months of my work and distilling it down into now. Any questions for Bunny or Ian?
I have one quick question, Todd, on this LB1. It looks like under the financial summary, the amounts from our adopted budget, 264 million goes down to 255. So from 2021 to 22, and then in the next budget, we go down, decrease.
That is basically, that comes, because that's money we spent on the bonds. That's going to go down every year until we finish the until we finish the capital projects and as we do the payouts. So it's starting at the highest budget when we sold the bonds and we got the full funds. And as we do our projects, we're not getting more income. We're just spending.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, I should have pointed that out last year, that we all should have celebrated last year because it's not going to ever look that good again. I did put in your, I did send you some sample motions when you're ready for that.
Oh, and where are those? I didn't see those. Oh, yes, I see them. I've got them. Separate paper.
Yes, separate.
Did
Okay.
you talk about what the FTE increases are?
Yes. FTE increases, that includes, help me out, 3 PSS, 2.8.
Sorry, 1.8.
1.8 public service specialists, that's your frontline staff when you come in. 1 new IT tech, 1 new
E-services.
e-service, I forgot the title of it.
Whatever Dylan's.
Okay. Yeah, 1 more person in e-services to help in that area. And that also, and then includes hiring some librarians, and I can't remember the exact number.
Two librarians.
And if I seen Ithia's, I'm trying to balance out who we're replacing and who's new.
Right, right.
So we'll be filling in a couple of librarian positions and I forgot the name of the coordinator for your area.
Well, the digital coordinator is actually this year, so that's
No, the
not,
other one.
oh, the programs coordinator?
Programs coordinator, which is a new position that we're doing. All of our programming right now runs through, all of our adult programming runs through our community relations department. They've got it down. They book somebody, they get them in. And then for our children and teens areas, we want to add that support there to free up our librarians instead of going around and trying to secure contracts for performers, actually getting somebody that does that full time. And I believe that was the majority of the ones we were filling today.
Okay.
One facility? Or not this year? Okay.
Yeah, okay, that's always a good number to look at.
Yes, yeah, thank you for asking.
So the question that always gets asked is what's not in this budget?
What's not?
Well, I mean, are there things that you said, not this year?
There are a couple, yeah. We had requests for an additional librarian, but we wanted to see kind of how it plays out with what's going on and how our growth is going. We had a request for an additional IT tech, which I'm very supportive of, but I think we need another year before we start ramping up with the buildings. Part of what we're doing is kind of holding off until we're in a weird spot.
Right.
Where we know we need to hire, we're gonna have to hire more over the next couple of years. But we kind of need to get the buildings going. And we're trying to balance it out so that we can get them before the buildings open. So we're not scrambling, but we don't want to get them and have them sitting around waiting for a building to open.
Right, no, that makes perfect
Yeah,
sense.
so
And you will probably have a better idea of who you need, like what expertise you need when it's closer to the time as well. Because that could change and you don't want to have to hire the wrong people.
I should have added that when we do Lapine and Sisters and Redmond, we will continue operating in those communities. We'll have temporary facilities. And that affects this as well. So if we didn't do that, we probably wouldn't hire as many people, but we need to operate those temporary facilities. So we will be doing that. Yeah.
Todd, I have one more question too. I know you've postponed the bands to this next year. We also, I think last year talked about the kiosks, and I don't think those have been purchased, or one was purchased. And did that get postponed to this next year?
It didn't. We actually decided to, after studying it and kind of seeing where and realizing how much time and effort is going into the construction projects, that we weren't ready for it. A couple of things are happening, and that is, well, one, we really need to see how these buildings are functioning. We're pretty excited about it because we got to go play with upgraded kiosks at a library convention a couple months ago. And so we're still very excited about them, but there's something that we want to supplement what we're doing with their buildings. And a big piece of that is, it's part of that whole need to have a centralized library, kind of a main library, so that we can actually run and process materials and get them out. So the more auxiliary things we have, the more pressure we have on our buildings, and we're kind of tapped out next door. So that's kind of our thinking there.
We are tapped out. We have been tapped out.
Yes, so that realization that, yes, that would be neat to try, but we really need the support behind it to happen. And that's kind of the good news is while we're waiting, they're perfecting that technology. So stay tuned. Probably in a couple of years, we'll be back with the same requests. But right now, we don't think we're ready for them.
Okay.
Look at when Cynthia and I, right before the pandemic started, compared to what we just saw in Portland a month or so ago. Yeah, like huge changes, like they're figuring all kinds of stuff out. And there's a lot of libraries that have experience with it, and they kind of know what to warn us against, so we don't make the same mistakes. So I think the technology is moving super fast because they're a popular option because they work so much better than bricks and mortar buildings. I mean, they deliver really great service for a fraction of the cost. So.
Yeah. Do you know of any libraries, systems in Oregon that are using any kiosks?
Not in Oregon.
Not in Oregon. I don't have that at my fingertips right now, but I know that there are some. And I want to say it's in,
Hillsborough
It's either-
had them.
yeah, the ones that we were looking at with the FE Tech company would be either Illinois or Indiana. I can't remember. So.
Yeah. But no, other people in Oregon have had that really love them.
It's actually one piece of, you may hear a lot of talk about neighborhood libraries and be able to walk to a library. A big reason that when we looked at that, we didn't go that direction is operationally, we couldn't afford to staff a lot of buildings. But once we have a centralized processing place, we could definitely reach multiple neighborhoods with other advances, kiosks, mobile libraries, increasing what we can do with school services. Right now, we have our Library Links program where we deliver books to schools, but we have to stop at 25 schools. And I can't remember how many there are in the county at this point. It's over 30 something, just elementary schools. Because again, we're tapped out. We can't add anymore because we can't service them. And so those are things that are going to help us get out and reach more people closer to where they are once we have that central service.
And the funds that were allocated for the kiosk last year, that just, those got rolled into the general fund since it wasn't purchased?
No, those were actually, I think we were going to purchase that out of the reserve fund.
Right.
So it just got absorbed into the carry forward for the reserve fund.
Okay, okay.
Money's still there. It's
just waiting for the right
yes,
time.
it's waiting to spend something else.
Just in a different pot.
Yeah, which is good news though, because we do have a healthy reserve fund, and when we are ready to do those kiosks, we do have money ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right, well, thank you. That's it's always fun for me to get very nerdy about something I spend a lot of time on, so I appreciate the chance to do that. So thank you.
All right, excellent work, all of you, Todd, and I'm sure Robert had a lot to do with this, and the rest of you guys. It's amazing amount of numbers to put together.
Actually, thank you for pointing that out. While I get to get up here and talk about it, our entire staff puts this together, especially our management team, and puts a lot of effort into this. I just get to get up here and make it look like I did it all. So thank you.
Excellent. So does anybody else have any questions on this? No more questions? All right, then I guess I would entertain a motion to approve the budget.
I'll do that, Connie.
Holly, I move that the budget committee of the Deschutes Public Library District has received and hereby approves the budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year as presented.
Do you have a second? A second?
Second.
Okay, any other comments, questions? All those approved, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Then I guess I would entertain a motion to approve the tax rate.
I will move that the budget committee of the Deschutes Public Library District approves taxes for the 2022-2023 fiscal year at the rate of $0.55 per $1,000 of assessed valuation.
I second it.
All right, motion has been seconded. Any other comments? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. And I think that was all of my duties for a budget committee chair, so I'll turn things back to Ann.
Okay, well, thank you for your service, and I want to thank all of the budget committee members for their service. What you do for us is really important, and this is not easy work. I mean, this takes a lot of preparation and study, and we really appreciate you guys and your willingness to continue to step up and help. And that year-to-year continuity is really important, because I think you guys all have a really good grasp of what it is we're trying to accomplish, and you have that year-to-year background, which I think really helps you take a closer look. So thank you very much for giving of your time to our community. Okay, well, with that, I guess I need to adjourn the budget committee. Is that correct? Okay, I will call this budget committee session adjourned. We will go back to our regular board meeting. And if any of you want to take food,
Yeah,
take
please.
that. I should have said that at the very beginning, if you're sitting over there thinking, I know, yeah, take food with you, for sure. Yeah. Wow. Another day. Okay, so Todd, I think we're back to library news.
Okay, sorry, I've been talking too much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye,
Thank
thank you, good to see you.
Oh, okay. And I completely apologize. As you see, I just put a mask, I just got a text and Terry has COVID. So, I know, I'm sorry, everybody. Yes, I'm sorry. Let's see, updates. I know. Sorry, Lori.
When he put his mask on, I'm like.
Well, and I took mine off because I was feeling stupid. It's all right, I mean, it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It's all right now.
Well, she took one yesterday and she was fine, and took one today and she's not. So.
Yeah, can I do a library news?
Yeah, please, because I'm my.
So I haven't sent emails, but I'm happy to. I just wanted to let you all know that we have a retirement. Holly McKinley, she might even be on here. She is retiring after 15 years with the library. We're very happy for her. And we're gonna have a little get together for her next week. So I'll send you guys an email, a meeting invite. It'll be noon to 2 next Wednesday. So if you're in town and are so inclined. We're very happy for her.
Well, I'm sad for
Sad to
us,
see
but
her.
very happy for
Yeah,
her.
no, it's very, very well earned and we're gonna miss her.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Yes. But be happy to introduce the new person when she starts in July. We already have some.
So Holly, we will miss you for sure.
Are you there,
You are
Holly?
kind of
There she
irreplaceable.
is.
There she is.
Hi, Holly. Hi, Holly.
Yeah,
She's like, I'm out.
there she is.
I will miss all of you. It's been a pleasure to work for the library, of course. And it's bittersweet, very bittersweet. But I'm looking forward to retirement, spending more time with all my grandchildren. So that is a fun thing.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you for everything, Holly. Wow, that's
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Okay, I think that's it.
That's all the news that's fit
Yeah.
to print.
Yeah.
Okay, so foundation news, we just ended up our 19th year of Novel Idea, which seems amazing, and it was a wonderful Chantal, do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Sure, we we were really happy with the, okay, I was gonna take off my mask, but we were really happy with the results of this year's Novel Idea because it was our first one in person in 2 years' time. And we had really great turnout. So it showed us that people are really eager to get back in person. We had a couple programs that had 80 people show up, others that were around like 40, 50. And then our main event at Bend High had more than between 600 and 700 people attended, which was wonderful. And just the right amount for Bend High so people could spread out a little bit. And then we also had an event in Madras, which was more intimate, and the authors said it was one of their most special events they've ever been a part of because it was so special and kind of one-on-one connection with the different people who attended. Mostly during the book signing, they really felt like it was just a very special time to have good conversations with people about the topics of their book. So we're very pleased with how this first one came out of the box after 2 years. And I just want to recognize Liz Goodrich and Laurel Westendorf and Paige Farrow because they really led the way. And then the rest of the community relations team and community librarians supported as always.
Thank you. I just, I think this is one of our most beloved events. And I mean, when you talk to people about why they love the library, I mean, they love the library for all different kinds of reasons, but this is a frequent one that comes up, that people really think that this event is special, and I agree with them. It's just like a highlight of the year. So thanks to everybody that made this possible. I know it takes a ton of work to pull off, and thanks to the foundation for raising the money for this, and all the staff that put in the long hours to make it possible. So thank you very much. So we're on to self-review of the meeting. Anne, do you want to start?
Sure. I just want to say a big thank you to the community members of the Budget Committee. I really appreciate their time and their effort and their participation in the process. I also really appreciated the thoroughness of both Robert and Mark's reports. Again, just their attention to detail really helped my understanding of what they were presenting. And Todd and the management staff, I thought that the budget report was very, very well done. A lot of great information and presented very clearly. So thank you.
Okay, Bunny?
I'll reiterate that too. Am I on here? Yeah. The presentations from both Mark and Robert, I thought were very well done and very understandable. I appreciate that. And Todd and the rest of the staff that puts that budget together, that is a huge task. And I appreciate the explanation and your patience with us as we go through it. So I thought it was an excellent meeting.
Okay. Cynthia?
Basically, what both of them said, we're really lucky. I think when we see reports like this, we understand what outstanding staff Deschutes Public Library has. A lot of effort goes into putting things together, and you make it, as they said, you make it everybody makes things very understandable for us. So I appreciate all of you do.
Yeah, and I agree with what everyone has said. I mean, I think it was a great budget presentation. I do appreciate the continuity that we have in the budget committee. They're really well informed and very thoughtful and ask good questions. And I think it was a super productive meeting. I mean, it's long, but I think we got a lot done. So moving forward all the time. So thank you very much, everybody. And with that, I will wish everybody speedy recoveries. And I just yeah, I just hope everybody stays healthy or gets healthy and recovers quickly. So with that, I'll adjourn the meeting.
Let's hope you both are doing well.